Samus has never had much of a personality. She's mostly just been a stoic badass until that other game. Or so you would think. Apparently, the Metroid manga had given her actual personality way before Other M did. But anyway, we have a gaming psychoanalysis to do. This time, we're going to take a look at Samus and her supposed PTSD. Wait! Before you hit the dislike button because Other M and the manga ruined your life, hear me out. I'm about to tell you why her PTSD is what makes her an even stronger character than before. She enjoys her life on the planet known as K2L. From the sky, a ship descends and off steps the Chozo. Peaceful and wise, they do no harm to the humans who had colonized the planet. This peaceful visit, however, was cut short when K2L was invaded by the infamous space pirates. All but one human had been slaughtered, the little girl known as Samus Aran. An event such as this would easily leave anyone traumatized, much more a child who had seen her parents killed right in front of her. Ridley left a fire burning in Samus that day. While he was a terrifying beast, Samus knew he had to be stopped one day. Samus was then saved from a lonely, hollow death by the returning Chozo, who would infuse her with Chozo DNA and train her in the ways of the Chozo, which in part was teaching her how to use the power suit. Later on, if we take into account the second volume of the manga, we establish that she indeed has a form of a panic or PTSD attack, in which she responds to Ridley's taunts about her family by collapsing to the ground in silence. In the end of the manga, we get a glimpse of her supposedly conquering her PTSD to fight Ridley. But is that truly the case? PTSD is a difficult mental illness to pin down, as symptoms come in and out of play months or even years at a time. These symptoms, according to the ADAA, include re-experiencing the trauma through intrusive, distressing recollections of the event, flashbacks and nightmares, emotional numbness and avoidance of places, people, and activities that are reminders of the trauma, increased arousal, such as difficulty sleeping and concentrating, feeling jumpy, and being easily irritated and angered. And the thing about these symptoms is that it is so hard to nail down a specific moment in which a person will be thrust into them. While generally we can say that when in dangerous situations we could see an emergence of symptoms, what kind we get and exactly how they show up is really on an individual basis. Samus had been known to be the brooding loner type since her conception, and while there are technical limitations to fault for the development in the first few games, they chose to leave it this way in later installments. Samus is one of the few cinematic heroes from the Nintendo universe, so why wouldn't they choose to develop this deep story with her? Truth is, they have. Her sullen attitude is easily attributable to her stress disorder. Emotional numbness and depression are just two of the symptoms we can see on the surface. She has been fighting these feelings of absolute hopelessness and anger, just as she has been fighting countless enemies. With that in mind, it's not hard to imagine the reason, other than relatability, that Samus has been left a somewhat blank slate over the years. While she's had moments of immense strength in conquering her trauma, it's not as easy as it sounds. Stress disorders can attack at any time. While often the result of being put into stress-induced situations, we have to look at the life of Samus for this. She's been constantly living in stressful situations, so it takes a lot to push her to the breaking point. Let's explore this a bit. When she fought Ridley in every occasion chronologically before Super Metroid, she had seen Ridley escape or disappear, knowing that each time he disappeared, he would eventually show up again, albeit altered, improved. So in Super Metroid, she has a more angered reaction. She's fed up and scared and just wants it to be over. She doesn't show her fear here because she's trained not to let fear conquer her. Her PTSD from childhood has slowly started to go away over time, in the sense that she can work around it now. But seeing Ridley here, again, after defeating his most powerful Omega Ridley form, floods her with rage. Rage for what she has been through for the years she's been the Samus we know. So this time, she vows to completely destroy him and make sure his remains cannot be put back together. She fights him as she would, but with such ferocity that she finishes the fight by breaking apart his body in an explosion, and watches as Ridley disintegrates into ash. He is dead. Finally. Then, she completes her mission and kills Mother Brain too. And to make sure that these ghosts of her past can't come back, she destroys the entire planet. What ash was left of Ridley is now gone, erased from existence. She is relieved. There is no possible way for him ever to come back. She is free. She can finally relax. That is, until Other M. Which, on a side note here, I am not defending Other M as a great game. It was okay, not good, but not bad either. But it fell into some tired tropes of science fiction that have been explored time and time again, while neglecting some of the aspects that could have been explored but were left hollowed out points that ultimately just weakened Samus's characters in the eyes of many of those in the audience. What I do say is that we get some nice glimpses of the story. Other M starts to flesh out Samus's character in a very cinematic way, and true, it could have been used to explore her psyche much better, but oh well, that's what we're doing here now. Anyway, back to the issue of Other M. Why would we see her PTSD resurface after so many years? And how does that make her a stronger character? Well, through the time between Zero Mission and the end of Super Metroid, it was always her anger pushing her on. She always knew Ridley was still out there in some aspect, which caused her anger and a thirst for vengeance. Though not as crazy as that makes her sound, she's not falling to the dark side or anything, because the Chozo had thought of this and also trained her to use that anger and focus it, turning it into greater power for her suit. Though, having to confront Ridley in Zero Mission brings back the trauma and causes her to hesitate in the beginning. But with Ridley still out there somewhere, she never truly conquers it and never truly gets over it. But she does get better because she can accept that she's now strong enough to face the monster who she couldn't years ago. That is, until Super Metroid, as we've discussed. Now in Super Metroid, she conquers her PTSD because she realizes she's stronger than the enemy she's been chasing, and defeats him for good. It's only until Other M that we see her succumb to the hesitation and trauma again. But it makes sense. Samus had obliterated her source of PTSD, only to have it revived by the same people who she allied with in the past. She thought she was safe from it, and she let her emotional guard relax, only to leave it open. So seeing as this is the situation, it's easy to understand why Samus would relive her past trauma here. She thought she was strong enough to rid the universe of her parents' and planet's murderer. But yet again, even though she completely disintegrated his remains, he's back to kill her. Same thing with Mother Brain to a lesser extent. So, now with her once again destroying Ridley and Mother Brain, she finally realizes, for real this time, that no matter if they come back to life, she is cemented as the great equalizer, and she has the strength to take on these threats no matter how many times they return. But I've neglected to talk about Metroid Fusion until this point, and there's a big reason for that, aside from being the last in the timeline, that is. Fusion is the true ending to Samus's fight with PTSD, and while I'll briefly cover the Neo Ridley appearance, just look at the biggest antagonist in the game, SAX. It's Samus, but not only is it Samus, no, it's Samus in her strongest form from her past. Back to Neo Ridley for a moment. When we see Ridley for the first time, his body crumbles. Why is this? Considering Ridley has been such a big nemesis for her, why would we be given Ridley only to watch him crumble to dust at the infection from an X-parasite? Well, it goes back to SAX. This is her biggest fight because it is her demons come to life. While a similar argument could be made about the Phazon Samus from the Prime series, SAX represents a much more experienced Samus. Even the Neo Ridley fight doesn't give us our old boss, but an exaggerated version of him. While this could be explained away as the X-Parasite trying to evolve Ridley and make him a more deadly adversary, It's more than that. It's a pretty clear example of symbolism, in that through the X-Parasite, we see Samus facing almost a nightmarish form of her deadliest boss. And in the same vein, she faces her form twisted into SAX. SAX and Neo Ridley are both there to represent her inner demons and her fears. For most of the game, Samus has to run away from SAX, much like she has to run away from her trauma, or it would kill her, at least in her earlier adventures. But she does finally face SAX. She finally faces her demons head-on. This is important because this is what many real-world soldiers have to go through when dealing with PTSD. Though on the subject of Samus, it is downplayed for the need to tell a more concise story. This is still representative of the fight sufferers go through, though. The way people deal with and get past PTSD is very similar to the situations presented in Fusion. They spend so long running away, but finally, they turn around and accept that this is a part of their life that they have to deal with. And though the struggle is hard and takes a lot out of you, if you can take down these demons from your past, you are free to become a much wholer person. Much like we see happen in the final boss fight of Metroid Fusion. Alone, both the Samus who faced her demons and the demons in the form of SAX fall short in fighting the Metroid. It is only when Samus finally accepts that this is a part of her she has to deal with on occasion that she's elevated to a much stronger fighter. It is unfortunate that these things happen to us, but once they do, all we can do is accept what has happened and get up to fight on. There are struggles, and there is pain in life. For some, there is more. For some, there is less. The important lesson is that we all keep going forward and live. Samus faced her PTSD in Other M, and finally accepted her struggle in Metroid Fusion. And this is why she's a much stronger character because of her depiction with PTSD. Because we all know someone who is struggling, or we may be that person ourselves. Samus shows us that we may not always be at our strongest, but if we push ourselves to get past our struggles, we can always keep moving, living, and ever improving. Thank you so much for watching. If you like videos dealing with psychology, I have a few others right here. And please consider supporting this channel on Patreon, links in the description. Until next time, keep your noggin healthy, and don't forget to use it. Seen her parents killed right in front of her. Ridley left a fire burning in Samus that day. While he was a terrifying beast, Samus knew he had to be stopped one day. Samus was then saved from a lonely hollow death by the returning Chozo, who would infuse her with Chozo DNA and train her in the ways of the Chozo, which in part was teaching her how to use the power. Samus has never had much of a personality. She's mostly just been a stoic badass until that other game. Or so you would think. Apparently, the Metroid manga had given her her actual personality way before Other M did. But anyway, we have a gaming psychoanalysis to do. This time, we're going to take a look at Samus and her supposed PTSD. Wait! Before you hit the dislike button because Other M and the manga ruined your life, hear me out. I'm about to tell you why her PTSD is what makes her an even stronger character than before. She enjoys her life on the planet known as K2L. From the sky, a ship descends and off steps the pursuit. Later on, if we take into account the second volume of the manga, we establish that she indeed has a form of a panic or PTSD attack, in which she responds to Ridley's taunts about her family by collapsing to the ground in silence. In the end of the manga, we get a glimpse of her supposedly conquering her PTSD to fight Ridley. But is that truly the case? Chozo. Peaceful and wise, they do no harm to the humans who had colonized the planet. This peaceful visit, however, was cut short when K2L was invaded by the infamous space pirates. All but one human had been slaughtered. The little girl, known as Samus Aran. An event such as this would easily leave anyone traumatized, much more a child who had